Spring marathon season is just around the corner and you probably haven't started training for it yet. Well, luckily for you, I have 20 years of running experience and a 2:15 marathon personal best, and today I'm going to take you through all the things that you can do in your training to make sure that you get to that start line ready to smash your personal best. And if you stick around to the end of the video, I'll show you the exact template that I would use to plan your next 13 weeks of training. Let's go. The first thing that you need to do if you're running a marathon in April or May is just start training now. Well, watch this video and then start. But you just need to get out the door for your first run. Stop waiting on better weather, more energy, or the perfect training plan, because it's just not going to happen. If you haven't run for a while, this will likely be slow and feel rubbish. But the first one is always the worst. And the earlier you can get it in, the easier your long runs are going to feel, and the less likely you'll be to get injured once those long runs come around. So, great, Ryan, I should go for a run, but what should I actually do? Should I go fast, slow, 5k, 5 minute? Well, on this first run, and for most of your runs in the training block, it has to be slow and it has to feel easy. Now, depending on how long it's been since you last ran, going for an easy run may not be something that you can realistically do, but we're trying to maximise enjoyment and make sure that you want to come back again in a few days instead of going out for a really hard run that you hate and then you just don't do it for another 2 weeks. In terms of distance, the most that I would ever recommend someone do after some time off is 30 minutes of jogging. However, depending on your ability and your history with running, this could be 10 to 20 minutes or even just 20 minutes out of the house, where you're jogging for 1 or 2 lampposts and then walking until you feel like you've recovered. Really just prioritising getting out and getting started and adjusting that for your level. Also, it's very important that you're getting started in a good pair of running shoes, and for easy mileage I recommend something non-carbon, so like an ASICS GT 2000, an Adidas Evo SL, or an On Cloudmonster. And for your faster, harder runs and your race at the end of the training block, we'll go for a carbon race shoe, and this would be something like an ASICS Metaspeed or an Adidas Pro 4 or an On Cloudboom. And remember that we're saving these for the fast, hard sessions, hard long runs and the race. We're not doing easy mileage in these carbon shoes. Having some great running shoes will help so much with the second thing that you have to do over the next 13 weeks, and that is be consistent. There really isn't going to be one run that makes your marathon day, and you don't need to hit a certain mileage to run a good marathon. What you need to do is put together a training block where the training is consistent every week. You're running roughly the same mileage, you're progressing it gradually, and you're getting out for roughly the same amount of runs every week. The last thing that we want to do is train too hard and then have to miss runs a bit further down the line. You need to kind of find that limit for you and just ride that as close as you can without sacrificing future training. Of course, sometimes you just can't avoid injury or illness, but there is a few things that you can do to reduce the chances that you get sick or injured, and we're going to talk about them now. So when it comes to the marathon training block, it's not just about that 1 hour in the day that you're running, and you really have to prioritise your recovery and your nutrition to make sure you're getting the best out of yourself. This isn't about being obsessed with every single decision and not having any fun outside of running, regardless of how fast you are or how much training you're doing. It's just about making consistently good decisions most of the time, especially around those harder marathon specific long runs. Sleep and nutrition are definitely the 2 key things here, so let's focus on them. So you absolutely must do as much as you can to try and get as close to 8 hours of sleep a night as possible. And I know that people are going to be complaining in the comments about having kids or working early, and I know that these things can get in the way of sleep. However, you need to be honest with yourself and make the best decisions to maximise your situation. And yes, that does mean putting your phone outside the room so that you're not doom scrolling for an hour before bed when you could be asleep. I wear my Coros 24/7 and it tracks my sleep, and I found it to be really accurate and lets me know if I maybe need to push training back a day just to make sure that I'm not overtraining. I absolutely love my Coros and couldn't recommend it enough. This video isn't sponsored by them or anything, but there is a link in the description that if you do feel like buying a Coros, if you could use that link, it helps the channel a lot. But let's move on to nutrition. Now, there's a lot of stuff that I could talk about when it comes to nutrition, but first of all, I want to focus on the nutrition outside of training, and then I'll talk about how best to actually fuel around the long runs later in the video. So the main piece of advice for eating in normal life is do not limit your food intake under any circumstances. You absolutely need to fuel your body properly in order to get the training done. My dad's always said a car can't run with no petrol, and that's exactly the same here. You need to be eating enough. I can't say that enough times in this video. When it comes to the types of foods you should be eating, I don't know if I'm the best person to tell you because I recently got pulled up in the comments for my diet. However, in my opinion, the foods that you should be eating for running are the same foods that you would eat if you just wanted to have a good, happy, healthy life. Fruit, vegetables, rice, pasta, chicken, eggs. Don't overcomplicate it. As long as you're eating enough and trying to cut out at least a bit of the crap that makes you feel rubbish, you're probably doing alright. Anything else on top of good sleep and good nutrition should just be seen as a 1% gain. This doesn't mean that you shouldn't do it. I absolutely love my massage gun, going for massages, going for a sauna, having a hot bath. However, the sleep and the nutrition has to come first, and you should not neglect either of these things in order to do one of the 1% gains. So you've went for your first run, you've done a healthy food shop, you've started going to bed earlier, but how do you actually train for this marathon? Well, first of all, the marathon is really far, 26 miles or 42k, and you need to be prepared for that. You won't actually run as far as the marathon in training. That's not something that I recommend anyone of any level does. However, if you want a fast marathon, or at least just one that you enjoy, you need to be doing long runs, preferably up to 20 miles, maybe even slightly further, but I think that's enough. If you've ever raced a marathon, you'll know what your legs feel like the next day, the next 5 days. And again, the goal of this training block is consistency. If you're doing a marathon on Sunday in training and then trying to come back for a faster session on the Wednesday, it's just not going to happen. We need to find that balance where we're training hard, getting a good 20-mile run in, but then able to come back again on the Wednesday and still do some kind of faster session. I can assure you that you're going to finish up the last 6 miles of a marathon using your sheer will, regardless of whether or not you've actually ran that far in training before. So before I get into how this training block would actually look, let's talk about how we should fuel during the training. So for the easy runs midweek, you'll be absolutely fine with just eating enough, eating well, and then going out for your run. But for runs of say 90 minutes or over, you should definitely be eating a bit more. And this can start from the night before. Usually the night before a long run, I'll have an extra bowl of porridge after dinner. So I'll have my dinner at like say 6 p.m. and then at like 9 p.m. I'll have a bowl of porridge, and then I'll go to bed, wake up and just have my normal breakfast. And then when it comes to actually in the run, if I'm just going for an easy long run, I can be a bit less strict with the carbs. Now this doesn't mean that I'm not taking them on, but it just means that it's not loads of carbs that I'm taking with me. So for a 90-minute easy long run, I will take 1 to 2 gels on the run, and for a 2-hour long run, I will bump this up to 2 or 3 gels. And for me, I'm using the SIS 23 gram gels. So this is like 46 grams of carbs for a 90-minute run and 69 grams of carbs for a 2-hour run. Now, I would absolutely not get away with having this little carbs on a hard long run, and this is where you really need to lock in and make sure that you're getting enough in. So the general rule for fueling a marathon is that you should be having 60 to 90 grams of carbs per hour. For me, running a 2:15 marathon, this is somewhere between 6 and 9 of these 23 gram gels, which is already a lot. Therefore, I recommend people try the 40 gram gels, which pretty much halves this number. And there's also the option of drink mixes, which are usually about 80 grams of carbs per 500 millilitres of water, and this could go a little ways in helping with your hydration while you're out for a long run. However, when it comes to hydration, I think it's very important to have some form of electrolytes at least on you if you're feeling like you need a bit more salt. If you're starting to cramp up, it's good to just have them and be able to drop them in a little bit of water. It's not really going to do much if you're cramping. You need that salt. These electrolytes tend to come in either a little sachet with powder or in tablet form, and it's really just personal preference. If you find that you're a really salty sweater and you're cramping up a lot and it's becoming an issue or a limiting factor, I would recommend something like the Precision Fuel pH 1500 or the Pure Sport electrolytes, because these both have a high amount of sodium in them, which has helped me with cramping a lot in the past and hopefully can help someone else out as well. In my opinion, it's never too early to start practicing your fueling for the marathon. And if you don't get stomach issues, there's really no reason not to be fueling heavily on these long runs. And the faster you can find what gels work for you, how much you can carry, how much your stomach can handle, the more confident you're going to be on race day. The goal here is really to get on that start line with as little on your mind as possible. You don't want to be thinking, oh, can I run this fast? Or can I handle this many gels? Like, you want to kind of have these things already locked in because you've done the training and because you've practiced the fuel in training. So let's talk about how I would actually structure the training block for the next 13 weeks. I'm going to assume that up until this point you've been doing very little running. However, the principles for training are the same regardless of your ability. So the first 2 weeks of this block is really just about getting you into a consistent running routine where ideally you're getting out the door every second day and just gradually going a little bit further. Not every time you run, but getting to the point where in 2 weeks' time, you're able to run further than you're able to run right now. Moving into week 3, we'll transition into more of a speed-based session, and this can be anything that allows you to run a bit faster than marathon pace, definitely faster than the easy runs that we've been doing. Some examples of a harder session are 6 by 1 minute hard with 1 minute walking recovery, building up to something like 10 by 2 minutes hard with the same recovery. But experiment with this, find what you like, and we're just looking to get the legs moving quicker and getting the heart and lungs working hard. The second thing that we're going to be focusing on in these weeks is building up the volume on the weekend run, and ideally we're getting to the end of week 6 able to run about 20k. This doesn't need to be a consistent run, especially if we're starting from scratch, but being able to just get out for 20k is going to help us so much in the second half of this training block. Moving into week 7 is where we will transition into more of a harder long run, where we're trying to get some good running done at marathon pace. So if you already made it to 20k of volume at the end of week 6, this could start off in week 7 as 2k at marathon pace, 1k easy times 5, which gives you 15k of volume. And then we're just doing a little bit of easy running at either side to act as a warm up and warm down. The goal by the end of these hard long runs is to get up to around 32k of total volume, with at least half of that being at marathon pace. We will plan these on week 7, 8, 10 and 11, with week 9 moving back to just an easier time on feet sort of run where we're pulling things back just a little bit to make sure that we are absorbing the training that we're doing. When it comes to the final 3 weeks, there should always be a reduction in training moving in towards the marathon, and this will start with 3 weeks to go, but it'll be quite subtle where we're just cutting off a little bit of volume. And then when we get to about 12 days out is where things will really start to taper off and you're running quite a bit easier, quite a bit shorter, and just starting to feel really good as you move towards the race. And if you're starting from a place where you've been running, you can miss weeks 1 and 2, just jump straight into week 3. So that would mean that we are extending that harder section. And if you've been doing loads of running, you would do that. But In the first 4 weeks, you can add a second faster session into the week. When it comes to paces, I always say that if you finish the session and it was consistent and you found it really pretty hard, then you've hit the perfect pace, kind of regardless of what you thought the pace should be. However, I would recommend using the VDOT website, where you could put in a recent race performance and see how that correlates to other distances, and I'll leave that in the description below. I would also strongly advise doing some kind of strength work twice a week throughout this marathon block, and this will really help you stay injury free and feel strong in the second half of the marathon. A couple of pieces of advice that should help when it comes to strength work specifically. The first is that you have to start light and easy. Again, this is about consistency. We don't want you going to the gym, not being able to walk the next day and never wanting to go back. We want you to enjoy it and just do something twice a week, every week. And speaking of not being able to walk after the gym, the second important point here is that gym should never take away from the running or the recovery. So my recommendation would be that you avoid the day before the hard days and also avoid that long run day. The third important thing when it comes to gym is that something is so much better than nothing, and if you know for a fact that you don't like to go to the gym by yourself, you don't feel confident, you don't know what you're doing, you just don't like to go, just do something. You can do really good strength work at home, put some weights in a backpack and do calf raises, or you can go to a class in your gym, just anything to really strengthen the muscles. Finally, the fourth thing on gym is that in those last 10 or so days before the marathon, I would just cut it out completely. You're not going to benefit from doing weights in the last week of the marathon. All it's going to do is take away from the fresh legs that were gained from the taper. Obviously, I can't give any training advice that's more specific than that in a YouTube video, but I do offer coaching, and if you'd be interested in getting some one-to-one coaching from me, we'll leave a link to that in the description. I'll go through all your past training and make sure that I'm coaching for you, fitting things around your life, making sure we're prioritising your goals and just doing what we can to smash those goals together. Finally, when it comes to marathon race day, I did make a whole video on this just before the London Marathon last year, but I'll give a few key pieces of parting advice as someone who has suffered through quite a few marathons. The first is that you have to set realistic goals based on your training and not just try and take a massive swing for an incredible PB that's a little unrealistic. The marathon rewards patience and you have to respect the distance. And the golden rule of marathons is don't try anything new on race day. And I'm going to extend this to race week. Don't try anything. Just, it's not worth it, I promise. Just do what you've been doing. Trust the training. Believe that you can do this because you've been doing it for the past 13 weeks. And enjoy it. It's going to be the most amazing day. And you have to really just enjoy that. If you enjoyed this video or got any value from it, don't forget to subscribe, and good luck with your marathon training and marathon race. Cheers!